on the
The good
festival.
thing is though, like between us all, we've come up with a profit of
Welcome back, everybody, to the Jumps Show, the final episode. Get your handkerchiefs out and start crying, because it is the last in our Ante-Post series, and it's our Cheltenham Festival review. Later in the episode, I'm going to cry because we're going to be reading our profit and loss, so looking forward to doing that. But first things first, thank you all for your support throughout this campaign, throughout all our videos. It does mean the world to us. It's hugely appreciated. And in terms of views, we've reached new heights. In terms of likes, we've also reached new heights, and subscribers too. And we really don't take your support for granted. So it is massively appreciated from all of us here at the Jump Show. And please do remember to like, if you haven't, this video. We'd love to get to 250 for the last in our Ante-Post series. And click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'd love to get to 2,000. We're not too far away, and it'll be a great achievement here on the channel. Obviously, it's the first video since the Cheltenham Festival itself, and plenty to look back on and talk through as well. Jake, come to you first. How was your week? I know that you were the only one of us three who braved all 4 days. So for that alone, I have to give you a huge amount of credit.
Thank you. Yeah, I've completed the marathon again. Yeah, no, it was a great week. Cheltenham Festival week is always a great week for us, I think. Meeting some of you guys in the various establishments that we go to, enjoying the racing, going out for meals, going out for drinks. Like it is just a great week with great friends. So we always have good fun. Obviously, we'll come on to more of the controversies that have come out since about various degrees of competitiveness and all that type of stuff. But it was a great week. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Obviously, there were some low points and some high points, but yeah, I always love Cheltenham Festival week.
Oh, you can't beat it. Yeah, I mean, for me this year, it was the first 2 days were pretty underwhelming, but then the second 2 days, Thursday and Friday, really changed it. I thought they were absolutely brilliant in all sorts of ways, and I think rather didn't save the week, but I thought it definitely made the week a lot more palatable for us British with the Irish domination of the first couple of days. Dan, I know that you could only make the first couple of days, so what happened there, my friend? It's very unusual for you.
It is, but I just am feeling older on a regular basis. Like it's unbelievable. I think in the last year or so, I've aged 10. Like generally, I'm soft, to put it lightly these days. But look, the first 2 days, obviously, I got there on the Monday evening as well. So there were 3 days I was there in Cheltenham itself. I say lovely few days. Like it's one of those where we've built up for something for so long. You're always going to have such an emotional investment in it. And obviously, I think a couple of the races in particular, I was basically stunned into just silence, and all the kind of emotion is let go in one fell swoop. But we have your highs, you have your lows, you have your moments, you got your head in your hand, you got your moments thinking, my God, what have I just seen? What has this sport become? A bit of everything, I think. And obviously, a fair few podcasts have maybe been over the top on their negative stance. And look, there's no doubting that things have to change, and there are some issues that need to be addressed. But the Cheltenham Festival will always be the big appeal. It'll always have a lot of intrigue and interest going into the week. Can things be changed? Absolutely. But I think from being there for a couple of days and obviously experiencing it with you boys and the people we see, I think the overwhelming sense is that people still enjoy it. I think it's just a few things to tighten up.
Yeah, I think it's mainly to do with the races themselves, isn't it? Possibly a bit of tweaking. I think we all are in the same boat regarding the National Hunt Chase and the Brown Advisory being there together. I mean, the best in the Brown Advisory. How good would it have been to see Corbett's Cross, for example, take on Factor File in the Brown Advisory? It would have been great to see. So that's definitely something to think about. I'm also in the camp of getting rid of that 2.5 mile novice, making it a handicap, as it used to be, novice's handicap chase. So that would be my thinking around the whole thing. There were a few Kevin Blake issues I wasn't too sure about his changes that he thought might be good, including making the Mayor's Hurdle a 0 to 150 handicap. I'm not entirely sure about that one. I quite like the Mayor's Hurdle. I've come round to it, having thought originally that perhaps, it's taking away from the champion, but at the same time, it's quite nice, I think, to give the Mares their own platform to really show what they can do. Obviously, in this case, it was Lossiemouth. Would have been great to see her in the champion, but she's only 5, so plenty more years for that to come. That's just my view on it, Jake. I mean, do you think there should be changes made to the race patterns for the festival?
Yeah, well, we've got to look at doing something. We can't just stand still and take it, can we? Like we need to do something. I'm sure they will come up with some kind of changes. They are usually pretty quick when we get backlash such as we have to do something. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, we'll obviously find out in the long term. But Yeah, I think there's got to be some kind of change. It's just obviously not Dr. Richard Newland changes, because that was one of the, the funniest things I think I've ever read.
We're going to build a wall. We're going to build a
Yeah.
wall on the Irish coast and just make sure none of them can come through. Which, yeah, maybe one of the more irrational perspectives I've seen. I think at the heart of it, he was trying to think what could he do to bolster the small trainer. I think was kind of what his mindset was, but he's just come down on the very extreme solution. But like things have to change. The worrying thing for me is what they said afterwards, that they were very keen to say, oh, well, from our experience of what people say, they want 7 races on the day, which to me is always going to be a fundamental issue, because I see very little world in which they're going to cut it back to 3. I think they've almost gone beyond that point. I think it would be better at 3, but I don't think they're going to suddenly reduce it. But if they want to keep 7 races a day, then I don't really see how you can improve it, because some just fundamentally need to go and need to be changed if we're going to increase competitiveness.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Dan. I think the only way to get past that would be to do something like making the National Hunt Chase, for example, back to how it used to be for horses of a slightly lower level, and for maybe tweaking the conditions of other races too, and making them not necessarily for graded performance, but for slightly weaker horses. But yeah, I completely agree with you. If they're going to keep it 7 races, it's going to make it tricky for everyone. Dan, I've got to say, one of my highlights of the whole meeting was standing behind you as Chianti Classic across the line in front. That was terrific fun, because coming to 2 out, I was like, oh, bloody hell, the lads are going to win it. It's tremendous. And then he just kept going. He kept going. It was a long final furlong for all of us, even though I had no investment. But for you guys, it must have been a tough watch, I think, that final furlong.
Oh, geez, it was always a tough. I was there, just there. I think I was there the whole time. Like, I mean, he was in a perfect position. I said to you, because you would have decided that was the moment to give me like play-by-play commentary in my right ear. I was like, the one time I did not need you just going like this in my ear was that race, because there was a lot on the line on that race, and I just turned to you grudgingly and say, "Yeah, he's in A1 here, a position A1." But I just shut up, please. This is tense, but we'll get into it a bit later. But yeah, that was undoubtedly the high point for me.
Yeah, and Jake, if you had to nominate a highlight for you in terms of just kind of general atmosphere, not horse performance, but what you enjoyed the most about the week?
Oh, it'd have to be Chianti in terms of the high point of the whole week. It's a shame that came in the 3rd race and everything was downhill from there. But we still had hope at that point, and yeah, I think yeah, it has to be that moment really. That was definitely the highlight.
Oh, for sure. We'll come on to the profit and loss a little bit later, because I know that you two lads have done really well. So congratulations on that. I was a little bit behind, but that's no surprise really, given that I am the sort of court jester of the jump show, and you two are the esteemed opinionated pundits, which is absolutely how it should be. Okay, let's move on to performances of the week then from the equine individuals themselves. Some of our favourite or most notable efforts over the course of the 4 days. And Jake, we'll start with you for this one. I know that you got a big, you had a big liking and you thought it was a really good performance from the winner of the Stayers Hurdle, didn't you?
Yeah, I've always loved Tupu. Obviously, I put him up on this series last year for the Stayers. Didn't get the best of rides, and I think for me this year, I know that some people will obviously crab that he's only had 2 starts, but I think he's just been obviously prepped to the minute and just gone and done what I wanted him to do last year. But he was that year older, put in a brilliant performance. Like he's put them away very, very easily. Obviously, Florian Porter's coming for second, ran an absolute stormer. The same can be said for Home by Lily and Buddy One. But yeah, I just thought that Tiupu was a really good moment. Great for Rob Corr, great for Gordon Elliott. And it was just, yeah, as I said, it was just good to see him do what I thought he could do. So yeah, I was just really happy with him. I know he's not the most, highbrow performance of the week, Willie Mullin type horse, but I just thought that he was excellent on the day, and yeah, he was definitely one for me.
I don't think you don't see many Stayers Hurdle winners win that easily in that race. I would say usually it's a bit of a scrap to the line, unless you've got a wonderful horse like say a Thistlecrack. But usually,
Yeah,
even the likes of Ingles Drever, they always had to battle, and I thought Tupu won that really well, to be honest.
yeah, definitely exactly that. He probably is. Is he probably the easiest winner since Thistlecrack? I'd probably say he is. Yeah, obviously he got his ground, but I just thought he was immense on the day and a thoroughly deserving winner.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put forward a couple. I'm going to slightly steer clear of the most obvious. First up, the main for me was Gaelic Warrior, and although it pained me really to see him coming home in front, I had to begrudgingly say well done to Willie Mullins, because I think it's one of the most amazing training performances I've ever seen actually in racing. to get Gaelic Warrior back from having jumped so markedly right at Leopardstown, to never being in the race against Factor File, to basically on shipping, he did unship Paul Townend at the last, all over the place in the parade ring beforehand, showing all his quirks and foibles, coming to Cheltenham, put a hood on him. Clearly, the horse that we all hoped he would be showed up at the festival in the Arkle, and he essentially won the Arkle on the bridle. Now, I know it's not the strongest Arkle in the world. It wouldn't have been the strongest we've ever seen, but it was still a decent enough race. And Fanta 50 is a good horse in his own right. And he was made to look very, very slow by Gaelic Warrior, who essentially did win a Grade 1 race at the Cheltenham Festival on the bridle. So, I thought it was an amazing training performance and a brilliant performance too from the horse. The other two I wanted to mention were Golden Ace in the Mare's Novice. Great for West Country trainer Jeremy Scott. He's been full of the joys of spring over the last few days about it. And you can understand why, because he's beaten two of the top Irish novice mares in the country. Obviously, Brighter Days Ahead and Jade Grugy. I mean, he beat them fair and square. I think they probably were keeping an eye on each other a little bit too much, and the pace of the race wouldn't have suited either of them. But fair play to Golden Ace. She did it, and she out-sprinted them in the closing stage. Should I superior turn of foot? I thought it was a brilliant run. And the other one I wanted to mention, I know that Dan's keen on this one too, was Madgeborough in the Triumph, simply because I thought the race might just come a little bit too soon for him in his career, because he's a massive brute of a horse. He's got clearly so much talent. But even for him, I thought, he might be a work in progress for, say, next year, the year after. He's going to make some horse over fences. But he won the Triumph Hurdle and beat Cargay. Sorry, Jake. But, did it really well and stayed on strongly. He got loads of stamina over that trip. It'll stay further. And the future is extremely bright for him. I think he's really classy. And he looks beautiful too. That's the other thing. He's a proper stamp of a horse. So those are mine. Let's see what you made of it all then, shall we? This is what you all thought at home of the week. Ballyburn got the most votes, 60% of your votes for performance of the week. Next up was Galopin Des Champs, 26%. Then Lossiemouth and the Mares, 11%. And Tupu getting 3% of the vote. But a big swing there for Ballyburn. And Dan, I know that you wanted to mention him as one of your performances of the week.
I'm a man of the people, as we always know, but I agree here. I think you can't come away from the festival and not think Ballyburn is the most exciting prospect in training, and by some distance. I think there was a general feeling that he was the standout novice hurdler going into this season in general as we got to the Cheltenham Festival, and he just kind of proved it. I know people will say, it was a 1-5 for William Mullins, and he had every horse in that race, a couple of disappointments, but he's just improving at a rate of knots every start of a hurdle so far. And obviously the form at the DRF has worked out extremely well. He's quick enough to cope, I think, with 2 miles, as we've seen. He's got enough stamina to go probably up to 3 without an issue. His jumping's improved. He's slick. He just has absolutely everything. And the issue is going to be now, we're getting to that stage where we're already talking, well, could be the first horse to go champion hurdle and then Gold Cup in time. So you have no idea what's going to happen next season with him. But I think that's kind of just the reality of what you have to accept with these Willie Mullins horses these days. But wherever he goes, my God, he's going to be an exciting prospect to watch. And then Galopin Des Champs, I was just really happy to see this. Obviously, I had L'Homme as a horse I hoped would run well, and he ran his heart out, I thought. So I was delighted with how he performed. But Galopin Des Champs just confirmed himself as a true champion. Obviously, we've seen the likes of recent multiple-time Gold Cup winners in Best Mate and Album Photo. Generally given a fairly cautious campaign with view to coming back to Cheltenham, but Galopin was campaigned aggressively, went up to all the Grade 1s you typically expect, the Savills, the Irish Gold Cup, won them, then goes to the Cheltenham Festival. And obviously people were doubting that because he had a relatively aggressive campaign. Could he do it? Could he peak again? And while it may not necessarily be his most standout performance visually and on the clock, the fact he managed to win again and win a shade cozily just solidifies that he is a true champion, a horse that we should all just appreciate, because we've seen it time and time again how difficult it is to get these horses back at the top of their game. So we should really just appreciate this horse as the great he is, and he's only 8 years old. Nothing to say he couldn't come back next year and do it all again. What an absolute superstar of a horse.
Okay, guys, let's move on to our review of our Ante-Post selection. I'll go last on this because I think I deserve to. But Jake, we'll start with you because Chianti Classico has made it a great week for you overall in terms of profit. Yeah,
absolutely. We always say in this series, if you get 1 or 2 in, then you're pretty much set for the week, and that's kind of how it's transpired. So yeah, we'll just obviously on the screen you can see all of my selections and the P&L as it goes along around the side. But Cargay's, we'll start with her. Obviously, she ran an absolute belter. She unfortunately went back to being like too keen, almost like she was over Christmas. It was a shame Danny couldn't get us in cover like early on in the race. Like when they just started, she was out wide and trying to pull up for her head. And then, when he brought her back in behind horses, she settled a lot better. But she ran an absolute belter. She came there on the bridle, cruising at the bottom of the hill. And I thought, here we go, we're in. And obviously, in the end, just being a little bit too keen and Majborough just being able to stay on that ground, combination of both, seen her come second. But it was a hell of an effort from her. Croke Park obviously didn't end up turning up. That was kind of a late surprise that he wasn't there. But again, he only had small chances anyway, so it wasn't the end of the world. Chianti Classica then, the big moment of the week. It was just absolutely magic watching him go. Obviously, he did have that little peck at the last, which scared the life out of us. But
there was no need for that. No need
for it. No need. But as soon as he stormed off up the hill, we knew I had it in the bag, and Dan ended up picking me up and lifting me up after he crossed the line. So that was, as I said, just a great moment. Unfortunately, Cossack Jack again was a non-runner. He just wouldn't have had a chance on that ground anyway. So I think he's going to Aintree next. That's where we'll next see him. Percival Legawa, this is a really annoying one for me because obviously I know the way you're thinking, went on an absolutely bolt up in the Kim Muir. So surely he would have done something similar if he was the one that went for the race. But I'm kind of happy that they've decided, look, he went up far too high in the handicap, and they've just put their foot down and said, no, we're not going to run him. But yeah, it was obviously a shame to see that happen. Same as Stayed Still. This is the big one that really got to me because I didn't have a penny on for the Supreme, not a single penny. And he's gone and won the Supreme, quite well in the end. Obviously, he stayed on strong with the ground, came for him, but it was a shame. He's obviously a very good horse though, and there's a little bit of vindication in that. Fast Vega was very disappointing. He was one of the few runs that I had that he's the only run that I had that disappointed actually. In the end, I've only had 4 runners, which is some kind of a record. I think I've managed to beat down on that. But yeah, he was very disappointing. Never got into the race. Krabili ran a cracker to finish second. Just probably wasn't streetwise enough. The ground probably just a little bit too soft for him. Made some crucial mistakes at the second last and the last. So he ran really well to finish second and get some nice each way returns. And then obviously Giovinco and Fear to Glory were non-runners. So yeah, finish up 10 points to each way stakes. If you did level stakes, just 1 point win on all of them, it would be plus 14 points. So absolutely buzzing with that, and another profitable year on the jump show.
Yeah, mate, really well done. Hugely congratulations, I have to say. It's a fantastic week for you. And considering you only had 4 runners, I mean, to get that kind of profit is it's very good, to be honest. You had a great week. I've got to say, Dan, in terms of profit made, even better for you. What a cracking few days you had with a couple of really big handicap wins.
Yeah, it's one of those where people are very, I think, snippy at times about Ante-Post betting on handicaps, and some literally just put a line for it straight away and say, how can you possibly do it? But time and time again, even when I've hit the crossbar with them, generally I've found them a very profitable way to betting at the festival Ante-Post before even entries come out. I think you can get an angle if you get horses at the right profile. And again, it's kind of worked out for me. Obviously, I'll point out a few, obviously, that were disappointing, get those out of the way. No flies on him. Obviously, we know what happened and how they handled his campaign. He didn't run. We then went on to Encanto Bruno, who didn't run. He was a bit of a strange one in the sense that, well, he was entering every handicap, then went to the one he was the least likely to go in, then was a non-runner because of the ground and wouldn't have won anyway, because obviously the ground is just not what he wanted at all. Safareur, who was a horse I was very keen on, went to the Grand Annual and ran a very creditable 4th. Just a shame wasn't the right race. And unsurprisingly, he was probably the only horse to come from off the pace and stayed on to in a respectable 4th. Who would have thought he would have won him further? There you go. Hopefully we'll see him over 2.5. I think there are races in him off that kind of trip. Staffordshire didn't run. Thank God for that. He would have had absolutely no chance. He somehow got even more backwards on the run after. I generally have never seen a horse get even more green than like he did. He's a 2-year project, I think, down the line. And then Northernary Joe was a bit of a shrewdy pick, I thought. And obviously for the Coral Cup at the time, went to the Martin Pipe and blew up like a lot of Nicky Henderson's did. And then a couple of did run that were slightly disappointing. The first one was Salvador Ziggy. I thought going into it would have been the best value of mine, like 16-1. He was into 4-1 in the morning. And then obviously the heavy ground was just never going to be his thing. Went off 12-1, basically ridden out the back all the way and pulled up. So yeah, just one of those you put a line through. You ought to know I was really disappointed in. His run made very little sense to me. He just looked flat. I mean, the fact he was so well beaten, despite clearly having the best form in the race, it was just a bit of a head scratcher. I don't know where you really go with him after that. That was a bit disappointing. Jello was a nice surprise, I think. Like, obviously, a few doubters on that one, and the premise was the race would cut up quite a bit. I thought it would maybe have 7 to 6 runners, and we end up with 11 somehow out of nowhere. So I was like, well, that's kind of gone out the window. But he was up there all the way in the vanguard with Grey Dawning and Ginny's Destiny, and finished a very creditable third for each way returns. Really happy with that run. He lacks the kind of size and class of those two and those in around him, but very likable horse. I think he'll kind of be in a rock and a hard place going into next season off a mark in a high 140s, but very likable individual. I'm sure Venetia will find races for him. And then we come on to the big winners. Obviously, Chianti Classico in the Ultima. Yeah, just what a brilliant performance. Jumps like a bunny, this thing. He's not the biggest of this said, but very likable horse, just does everything right. Just, yeah, brilliant. Except for that one peck at the last, as Jake mentioned, which gave me a heart attack and I still haven't quite recovered from. It was pretty smooth sailing when you think about it. When Meeting of the Waters in the Gotha came round about after 2 out, and Chianti Classico had kind of taken himself to the lead a long way out, I was just, oh, geez, no, I can. These are the two horses I don't want traveling well in behind. But in the end, he's beaten them out of sight for the most part. So really good performance. Probably more of a national type in the offing, I'd say. Maybe you'll see him in the likes of the Charlie Hall next season. But I think all roads will probably lead to Aintree. And I think they've already compared it to the Last Samurai. Obviously gave it a very bold bid in that race as well. And then the real surprise was Absurd, who on profile was just tailor-made for a county hurdle. And as the ground looked like it might start to dry up, and then Paul Townend was booked, you're thinking, right, we're in business here. I think he got to as short as about 6-1 at one stage, and then it had 10 mils overnight on the Thursday, and we're heavy all round. I was like, well, that was fun while it lasted. I mean, he's got pretty much no chance on that ground. He clearly needs good ground. Put a line through that one. And I was half tracking him. I was half tracking Load of Sud, who I also backed and have also banged on about a lot on this show over the months. So it was kind of a strange race to watch. See, Load of Sud hit the front turning for home. I knew Absurd had made a terrible error 2 out. He was still about 20th turning for home, but he was still going well. And I just think, well, you're probably just looking after him a bit here because there'll be races down the line for him. Very good horse. But my God, he got the best ride I've ever seen from Paul Townend. He has carved his way through that field like unbelievably well. And then he's made another error at the last and still won a shade cozily. Generally couldn't believe it. Like, he had no right to do that on that ground. But I think they all kind of prophesied afterwards that because it came a relative test of speed, as it often can do in the county hurdle, his just flat class has just proven a different level above those compared to like to Load of Sud, who is definitely more of a national hunt type, who probably got up to 2.5 miles, no problem. So that has just kind of paid dividends in the end. Another Willie Mullins county hurdle winner. It's hardly a surprise, but given all the circumstances that led up to that, I think even Willie Mullins said he put a line for him basically when the rain came. So it really was a welcome surprise, and one I probably didn't deserve, but one I'll gladly take because I've had my fair share of heartache and bad luck on these series. I think this is the 4th time I've done an Ante-Post series now, and it comes with its fair share of disappointments. So you've got to take the bit of luck and the good wins when you can. So at each way stakes with 21.4 points of profit, very happy with that. Win only 32 points. Look, it's one of those where I think last year I had a bit of a disappointing year. The year before that was good. It's kind of going in alternating years at this stage. So hopefully it doesn't follow that routine. Otherwise next year will be a bad one. But yeah, really happy. Like, Absurd was just the icing on the cake. Really, it just a really enjoyable watch. Some of these. So yeah, I hope some people followed along because it's been a really good week.
Yeah, I hope so too. 21.4 points profit. I have to say that is very good indeed. Considering as well, Dan, like we were all a little bit concerned, weren't we, in the lead up because you were having bad luck after bad luck after bad luck.
There was that week where 4 or 5 things in a row, like just like, like this. I know where this is going, but again, it just goes to show you because realistically, if I look back at like the last 4 years where I've done an Ante-Post show, I would say this is probably amongst the worst book I've had going into the week. But you have to just get a bit of luck because obviously it's small sample size. We've only had 10 bets in this series. So even across, say, you have 10 over those 4, it's only 40. That's still relatively small sample size. So even if I went into a week with like 5 or 6 really good value slips, they could all finish second. I'd come out a loser. I think it just goes to show you need just to get these good value tickets as much as you can. Eventually, you're going to have a really good week and then it's going to work out in the long run. You just have to kind of take the good with the bad. And this was one of the good.
Yeah, it certainly was. My week, on the other hand, was probably more bad than good. It wasn't as horrendous as I thought it might be, but it was slightly disappointing not to finish in plus points. -1.8 I ended up finishing with. I'll go through them in order. Mighty Bandit for the Triumph, that was my first one. Obviously, we heard a lot about this horse. It's not been plain sailing from this season. I spoke to Warren Greatrex actually in the week leading up to it, and he said he could have just done with another week for Mighty Bandit. He wasn't quite where he wanted him, and he didn't run a good race at all. He was pulled up and never really went a yard, to be honest. So that was obviously disappointing. I was delighted with the run of Korak Rambler in the Gold Cup. I thought he ran an absolutely massive race, a hard race too, for anyone who wants to support him for the Grand National. I'd be a little bit concerned about that because it was a tough old race he had. With Korak Rambler, unfortunately, he's the kind of horse, because he's such a nutcase, you just have to hold him up and hope for the best. And he made up so much ground from the back of the field in the Gold Cup. I mean, he went past every single horse, bar Jerry Colombe and obviously Galopin Des Champs. And I thought it was a massive effort to do that. I mean, he's clearly got plenty of gears. Unfortunately, in terms of win opportunity in a race like that, I feel as though his running style lets him down a touch. Obviously, he wouldn't have beaten Galopin Des Champs. I do think, though, he might have beaten Jerry Colombe for second spot if he could have been racing prominently as the other two were. I think he just makes a rod for his own back, really, racing so far back. But it was still a good run, 25-1 each way. I was very happy with that. Hunter's Yarn was my big disappointment of the week. I was really gutted about this because I got the value, 14-1 he was tipped at, and I think he went off something like 5-1. And the problem was with that, though, is that from the very outset of the very start of that race, he was just never put in it. He was at the back all the way through. The race sort of materialized between the front three at the head of affairs and never really changed. Even Matata stuck around, fighting on towards the finish, and he led early, and that just shows you it was nothing got in for it in the back. He stayed on for fifth in the end, but he was never in with a hope. I don't think he really liked the ground that much either. I think it got a bit soft for him on the day, so that was a big disappointment because I was really keen on him going into the race, and I think possibly in hindsight, maybe he could have done with a little bit more experience going into the contest. Only had the 2 starts over fences, and the previous one was quite a long time before the festival, so maybe another run in him would have done some good. On to Monty Star. I thought he ran a great race, I have to say. 16-1 tipped at. I'm not actually sure what price he went off. It was a lot shorter than that. And I think he ran a fine race behind Factor File. Unfortunately, just bumped into one. Factor File, he's a very, very good horse. Won that pretty easily. Going to be a Gold Cup horse in the making. Tony Mullins said that he's as good as Galopin Des Champs is already. So, I mean, you make of that what you will. I don't believe that myself, but I think it was still a great run from Monty Star, and I thought it was a good run too from Ginny's Destiny. This is the one that I think got away in terms of the win. I was really confident coming down the hill. He had a nice lead all the way through. Again, it was fought out between those prominently, as Dan mentioned, with Jello also up there for most of the way, and of course Grey Dawning just tracking Ginny's Destiny. But I did think if Harry Cotton got an easy lead, he'd be very hard to catch, and he was hard to catch, but not hard enough because Grey Dawning won that really well and stayed on very strongly in the closing stages. But it was a good run. Unfortunately, just that win eluded me again. Yeah, then we get to the more disappointing and frankly ludicrous section of my Ante-Post tipping. Hitman, less said about that, the better. Never really in the race. Same for Mark of Gold. Thought I was really disappointing. But with Mark of Gold, it was absolutely bizarre because I tipped him at 33-1 before he won at Kempton. Then he went and won at Kempton, and then a week later he was 40-1. And I was like, what? Like, what's going on here? Like, how does that work? But in the end, he didn't run very well. So they all knew.
Well, the winners prove you don't want to do anything close to winning going into a Coral Cup. I think we know. Yeah. Unfortunately, your horse was honestly campaigned, which is the
exactly
the real
that,
downfall there. No, not
exactly. At all. Frere Dame, I mean, the ground just went against him for me. I think he wants much better ground than he actually got on the Wednesday. It was still pretty bad ground. He wants good ground, so I'm willing to chalk that down to the ground. I do think there is a good handicap in him, but he just needs a sounder surface, and clearly he wasn't the one that was truly off. That was an unexpected party.
I think air would suit him quite a lot. I think if he goes up to air, I think that would be his track.
Definitely. And the Skelton's like a runner at air, so I can see that for sure. I think that'd be a really good shout, Dan. So hopefully see him at air, maybe on one of their handicaps, or even possibly slightly higher grade than that. Daily Present was my last one in the Kim Muir. I have to say, going into the race, I was really sweet on him because half the battle was getting into the contest, which he eventually did. Loads came out. He was number 60 at entry stage, but managed to get in. And I thought, right, this is an absolute certainty to get in the first three. And he looked a little bit lazy. I just thought he travelled okay, but didn't jump great. And even though he finished fifth in the end, it was still a decent run. I was disappointed because I thought off that mark of 127, he was going to be a big, big player. And, he ran okay, but he wasn't there or thereabouts. And I never really thought he was going to win the race. So That was me done. Minus 1.8 points on the week. Look, it's disappointing, but it could have been worse. But of course, it could have been much better. I think the one that got away from me really was Ginny's Destiny. Would have loved that to have won. And I would have loved to have seen Favour and Fortune running in the county. But other than that, no real excuses. Korak Rambler ran a great race. I'm delighted for him, but never really liked winning. So that was really the story of my week. Had a few there or thereabouts, but unfortunately not a winner, which unfortunately in the Ante-Post game, in the profit game, you just can't be doing that. So that was
the good thing is though, like between us all, we've come up with a profit of 29.6 points. So like with the each way stakes, if you did the win onlys, that'd be plus 37 points between all three of us. So we've absolutely smashed it really, because I was watching Up in the Ante last night and they came up with plus 4.5 points between them. So, they had some great slips going into the festival and we've absolutely smashed them out of the park. So we've got to be happy with ourselves. and between us, we've done an absolute cracking job yet again.
Yeah, I think that, absolutely, Jake. It's been a really good team effort and wasn't anchored too much by me in the end, but you lads did so well.
Well, no, really, the thing is, like, as we say, like, this is such a game of fine margins. Like, you would go in there, like the 3 novice chases, for example, like you're on very good positions on all 3 of those races, and like one of them one of the seconds becomes a first, and you're laughing, and you're not minus 1.8, you're plus, like if Monty Star won, you're plus 14 all of a sudden. Like, it is just that close, and when you're only dealing with 10 bets, it's just going to be, you're going to have that variance, and that's just what you have to accept. But if you can keep getting those prices in the long run, you're going to be up. So just keep doing those. Those are the ones that clearly you had an eye for. So
and the other good thing was you managed to get 9 runners, which must be an Ante-Post record. 10 bets and 9 of them ran.
Yeah, I had 5. You and Jake had 4. So, but you had the same number as both of us combined.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't had.
That's where you went wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, love it. With 2025 in mind, then, lads, let's get one selection or two, if you're Dan overall, for next year's festival. So, Dan, start off with you. What are you going to go for?
So, I think the Martin Pipe is going to work out incredibly well. I think we had 4 horses pulled a miles clear with all of the right profile, all Irish trained novice hurdlers, all in their own right are interesting prospects going into next season. For my money, I think the best horses were 2nd and 3rd. I think Waterford Whispers tanked around like the best horse in the race. I just pulled Mike O'Connor's arms out for all the way. The scope he shows at his hurdles is very, very impressive. And he showed far more pace than I gave him credit for. I thought he'd be a real kind of staying 2.5 miler, but he showed gears and a lot of them. I thought he ran an absolute blinder, just got to the front way too soon, jumped the second last, but the new course in Cheltenham ahead. A hell of a hard place to be. Thought he ran a cracker. And Key de Bourbon, I thought, also ran extremely well. Just seemed to lack the change of pace that Waterford Whispers had on the turn. It looked like those two, the competition between those two. And Waterford Whispers looked to have the upper hand, but Key de Bourbon stuck on really well. I think they'll both make very good novice chasers next season. So with that in mind, I do think Waterford Whispers for the turners at 25-1. Given that Henry de Bromhead's horses obviously has well improved markedly for fences, this lad has only had 5 starts over hurdles, has improved markedly with each run. I think he's gone up to a mark of 135 in Ireland now. So he still has a way to go to be graded novice hurdler, but he's a massive scopy horse. I think he'll devour fences and seems to have more pace than I gave him credit for. And then Key de Bourbon, I think, is more of your archetypal 3-miler. I think he's 33-1 for the Brown Advisory. To Gigginstown may be more known for their staying horses as well. I'm not sure the Albert Bartlett was all that much this year as well. So I think maybe something a bit left field for the Brown Advisory as a long-term prospect, I think is interesting. And I thought the way he stayed on up the hill after looking a bit flat-footed on the turn would indicate to me that he'll be a 3-mile chaser in time. So 25-1 Waterford Whispers for the Turners and 33-1 for Key de Bourbon for the Brown Advisory. I had a couple of singles and also an each-way double on them, just in case that race does really pan out really well.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Already getting the bets down for 2025. 2 there from Dan. Jake, what are you going to go with?
All right, I can't wait for them to piss around with Waterford Whispers and get me in the Kim Muir off 145.
Don't you do it, Henry. Don't you do it. I demand a good, honest campaign, please. Just one.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go for a horse who didn't run at the Cheltenham Festival, which is a bit interesting considering what we normally do when we put up a tentative bet. I guess what it really is just one at a big price that might run well for next year. But I thought that a horse that definitely would have been favourite if he ran in it this year was Imperic Pass for the Turners. And a lot of people last season thought that he'd be going chasing this year, and I think it was kind of a surprise when it came out that he was staying hurdling. A lot of people couldn't really understand the decision, could they? I seem to remember at the beginning of the season. So Yeah, I just think that in Perret Pass, if he can jump a fence, which might be the biggest issue here, perhaps that's why they didn't. We'll find out in time, I'm guessing. But if he can jump a fence, then he's had a decent enough campaign for his first season in open company. He's been stuck to Grade Ones, finished second to Yupu in the Hatton's Grace, then was behind State Man twice. Obviously, he was quite disappointing at Leopardstown, but I'm not too worried about that in terms of his prospects going chasing. The way he won the Ballymore, he was very, very impressive. Obviously not as impressive as a Ballyburn, but he's definitely up there. And I think he might be running in the Aintree Hurdle next, perhaps. If not, I guess we'll see him at Punchestown. But either way, I think he'll probably have one more run, across one of the Irish festivals. And if he wins that, then obviously he's going to shorten for something like this just by default. So yeah, 20-1, 16-1 across the board. Like, I thought that he would be a very interesting one, especially as there are doubts about what Ballyburn is going to do next year. If he stayed hurdling, then this could end up looking like a decent bet. So yeah, and Perret Pass would be the one for me. I think he's got the scope for chasing. It's just hopefully he can have the tenacity to actually do it.
Okay, there you go. You got the 1-2 in the turners then, with Waterford Whispers and in Perret Pass fighting out tooth and nail at the Cheltenham Home Straight. Looking forward to seeing that. I'm going to go with Romeo Coolio at 14-1 in the Gallagher Novices Hurdle. He's also in the Supreme betting. He's a shorter price for that, but I just think he's the horse that needs a trip. And I thought you were an absolutely huge race to be second in the bumper. That was an enormous performance, considering I know that not everything had been rosy in the lead up to the race for him. And he actually went off quite a big price for Gordon Elliott, 18-1, I think he was in the end. But he's got loads of talent. Gordon's always said how much he thinks of this horse. And he just, to me, looks like a proper class individual. And I'm looking forward to seeing him over a trip. I know that Jasmine DeVoe stayed on stronger up the hill, but I think it was more of a turn of pace that Jasmine DeVoe showed that did him in rather than a stamina loss. So I think given an extra distance that Romeo Coolio can really show what he can do. And I think he's also the type who's going to improve for jumping an obstacle, whether that be a hurdle or a fence. But he's a lovely prospect in the making. And he's got a massive reputation. So I think 14-1 for the Gallagher, which is the race that I expect him to be aimed at, is a fair enough price for sure. So looking forward to seeing next year's campaign for Romeo Coolio. Guys, thank you very much. That was a lot of fun reviewing all of the Cheltenham Festival, all of the 4 days. And at this point, Jake, we're unsure of the current schedule, aren't we, in terms of what we're going to do for the rest of the season, but we'll definitely do one for Aintree, and we might have one for Punchestown too.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have an Aintree preview no matter what, and then hopefully we'll fit in some, around our schedules, some of the other big Irish festivals, and perhaps Sandown on the last day of the season or something like that. But just follow us on Twitter or keep an eye on the YouTube page. I'll be posting when we are putting something out or putting up a live stream or something like that. So yeah, we'll definitely try and keep you guys entertained until the flat really kicks in.
Yeah, certainly will. Couldn't have said it better myself. Guys, thanks very much. Been a pleasure as always. And until next time, please do remember to like and subscribe to us here on The Jump Show.